I'll open it again. I have to do a motion to, no, I don't. I just open it, right?
You can just open up.
Good morning, everyone. We're going to open the public meeting for our video conferencing policy. This was a published requirement that we have to have this public hearing. So a public hearing is now open. Are there any comments? I don't see anyone online here or here in the space.
You want me to just read the purpose real quick?
We will, yeah, so it's in the public record. That'd be great. So Tracy's going to read the what the purpose of the video conferencing policy is.
So the purpose of the hearing and the policy is that the agency is contemplating expanding the use of video conferencing under extraordinary circumstances for members to participate in a meeting of the agency in accordance with laws of the state of New York. The governor of the state signed legislation in April of 2020, amending the open meeting law regarding the use of video conferencing by public bodies when a quorum of the board, committee, or subcommittee is present in person at public locations. Members of the board or committee may attend and participate in open meetings of the board or committee in a location that is not open to the public if an extraordinary circumstance is presented as cause for video attendance and is established in written procedure, and said written procedure is followed. When utilizing the extraordinary circumstance, the public will also be given the opportunity to attend via video conference.
Okay, any public comment? I don't see anyone here. Any questions or from the board? No. Okay, I'm going to close the public meeting right now, and then I'm going to open the July 8th, 2022 City of Geneva Industrial Development Agency meeting. So the meeting is called to order, and just for the convenience of board members, we're going to do the motion to adopt this policy that we just had a public meeting. I'm going to move it up in the schedule a little bit. That way, Lowell, you'll be able to participate if you have to cut out. So I'd like a motion to adopt the policy that was it's included in the packet. I have a motion for this video conferencing policy.
So moved.
Rick,
Second.
Second, RJ. Any discussion about it? Any questions? It was in the packet. Everyone clear about what the reason for it is? Pretty much boilerplate. Thank you, Tracy, for putting it together. Okay, all in. Do you want a roll call on this?
Yes, please.
Okay.
RJ?
Aye.
Rick?
Aye.
Irene? Aye. Lowell?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
Jason?
Yay.
Ann?
Aye. Okay, motion is passed and takes care of that part. Okay, so the administrative reports, I need a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting, the June meeting. RJ makes the motion.
Second.
Second, any discussion, corrections, any concerns? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, opposed, passed. Now we have the financial report. We'll have the motion once Tracy kind of goes through that, I guess.
Yeah, not a whole lot to report here from June. The major thing is the income from the American Tower sale. And what you'll see is the 91,000 that came in. So it was a total of 611,000 that came in. Not about 91,683 stayed in the park partnership account. And then the rest was dispersed among the different organizations. I did something wrong here because the income for the Geneva IDA isn't showing on the account. I don't know why. I'm working with the auditor on these entries, but all of the disbursements were made. An amount was transferred over to the Geneva IDA operating account as the IDA's component of that. I think I just didn't record the deposit when I did it.
It's on the,
So that is there. It'll be fixed for next month, I promise. I was just talking to the auditor last night about this.
what was the amount?
Let me pull that up. Erin, do you remember what that amount was?
You recall?
76,
76.
424.
So that'll show up. It's there. It's in the account.
Okay,
Let's minus the 15% that we kept.
Yeah, so the 91
Net.
is the 15% that stayed with the park partnership.
Right.
And then the other thing that is just, it's not showing up right on the balance sheet either. Again, these entries I need to work with the auditor on just to make sure everything gets accounted for. But these disbursements to the city and the Ontario County IDA will wipe out those liabilities that are on the balance sheet for the park partnership. So everyone will kind of be paid off on their initial investments, and moving forward, it'll just be a distribution of revenues. And that should clean up the balance sheet a little bit as well. So again, working on the actual accounting of that, but we'll get there.
right, I see down below, you still have the liabilities there. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
that needs to get cleaned up as well.
Okay,
So
any questions on what's presented here? With the caveat that Tracy will have this cleared up next month.
yes, I promise.
All right. Motion to approve the financial report.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Discussion. All right, thank you. Well, before we go any further, before we don't have the update to the school, the city, I'd like to introduce Amy Hendricks, our new city manager. Welcome to the meeting. Thank you for coming. I'm sure it was a busy schedule for you these first couple of weeks here, and we appreciate you attending.
Thank you.
Listening to our concerns. Put on the very tall pile of concerns I'm sure you're dealing with. Anyway, so if the updates, it looks like the city school district does not have any report that they submitted. The GEDC, we do have a report. I don't see Miles on the call. Is he going to join us, or do you want to skip?
I thought he was going to. I think the main thing to update on that right now is the drums. So those were tested. Those are pentane and transmission fluid. So the city was able to get one quote for removal of those drums. Miles and Joe there are two more quotes forthcoming. If for whatever reason we can't get those two additional quotes, we'll probably bring that back for a sole source procurement next month. But if we have three quotes, we can go ahead and get it done. So you might see that on the agenda for next month. And
That was about the first quote was around $5,000.
it was almost six. It was about 5,800. And at that level, the Websters are going to take care of it out of the operating cash flow of GEDC, and then just hope that no other surprises come in this year. There's not a huge sense of urgency to move those right now. So if it has to wait a month, it'll wait a month.
You don't know how long they've been there.
Yeah.
Okay, any questions about the GEDC? All right, I'll move on to the city council report. And guess Tracy and Amy, you can handle. You want Tracy just to take it away?
Yeah, I'll just say hi, Amy. Hi, Tracy. This is the IDA. Amy did receive the memo that was included in your packet, just kind of talking about what the IDA is up to, what they'd like to be doing, and explaining that we don't expect all of the answers today, but just putting things on your radar. So I don't know if you had any thoughts you wanted to add to that here today.
I don't at this point. As Ann said, lots of different things coming in. I do think the other thing that I did receive too is the joint memo between LDC, IDA, and BID. I'm talking about a director for economic development and planning. That is something that is in the current 2022 budget. So that is there. Right now, we are bringing on, hopefully, finishing the final rounds of a comptroller search. From there, we can then focus on the next search so we can really get the leadership team up and running. So that is in current year budget. We're planning to do that and define that position, that scope, as well as what support staff will be there. Continuing with the Office of Neighborhood Initiatives, but also looking more broadly at that. So that's happening. And there, I'm sure, are other things that are going to impact the IDA as well, but nothing that I'm going to report on right now.
What is it, day 13 now?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. 13 working days. I didn't count the weekends, not that they're not involved.
Okay, any questions of Amy? Anything come up? The letter that Tracy had put together on our behalf to send to Amy so she could attend the meeting with some understanding of our goals anyway. Anyone have any questions? Everyone, okay, all right. Move on to the IDA projects. Tracy, you want to let us know where we're at?
Yeah, so the only two updates were the American Tower. Those funds were received, dispersed, working on those entries. And then the other thing just to have on your radar is that the American Legion project is going through the subdivision process right now. It's one big parcel, and that whole parcel currently is subject to the pilot, but there's a commercial and a residential component, and they're currently doing that subdivision. So you have a commercial parcel and a residential parcel. Once that subdivision is done, the IDA documents for that project will be updated to reflect only the commercial parcel. That approval just had that project needed to close due to some changes in legislation. So that'll be an easy amendment, and you'll probably get some documents to sign, but it won't require much of the IDA. It's just going through the process with the assessor and the planning committee to get that subdivision approved. And once we have that property description, we'll get those documents updated so that you're not incentivizing residential property.
Trinity still on board to close in fall.
Yes, Trinity is aiming for October, November.
Okay, good. And the Gateway.
So the update I have on that is the environmental services update under unfinished business. So if you don't mind,
Oh, I
I'll do
see.
that now.
Got it down there. Okay, I got it.
I can.
Okay. Okay, next one is the marketing committee meeting. We had a meeting, joint meeting on, let's see, June 30th with the members of the IDA and LDC. And there's a number of things we discussed as a joint meeting and making sure that we're coordinating our marketing efforts. And primarily what we talked about in this meeting was the zoning, which is going to be on the agenda for the city council. So this has been an ongoing process for the last 3 years anyway. And I understand Neil is working on that, finishing it up. It started with some consultants. I kind of went through the term. COVID kind of delayed some things. And so the last draft of the zoning map, which we were looking at, is May 28th, 2021. So a little over a year ago. In there were some properties that the group felt we could discuss about having the opportunity to develop. Doesn't mean that development's going to happen there, but the zoning, the way it's written, it'd be nice if we could zone certain parcels or certain areas of the city that would afford us the opportunity to market those properties and or try to expand development opportunities on those properties. So we presented a map and Tracy, it was kind of a confusing meeting because we were all over the map, literally.
And I don't know where all the parks are.
Right. Yeah, some of it was familiarity because there's a lot of corners here. But we focused on essentially 5 areas, 2 of which are the lakefront. We felt that if we could expand the green space, and I don't know if this is helpful, but there's areas along the lakefront. The only thing that's blue on that map is where the lakefront 41 previous Ramada property is. So that didn't change, but we changed all this back to green. It was developed as a PUD, which it could allow development in here, and that was changed on the zoning map. So we had a long discussion about that, thinking that was short-sighted, and that if we could expand some of the blue areas on, adjacent to the Ramada property, going up to the lakefront or up to the visiting center, I'm sorry, and then on the other end of the property by the state park entrance, if those two could be zoned for mixed use hospitality, which means residential could go in there, but also a hotel and or restaurants or that type of thing. Now, our purpose is not to say that's what's going to happen. We're not saying that there's development there. There's no developer available. It would just make it possible for a developer to do it. That doesn't mean we have to approve any plans. That doesn't mean, it doesn't really lock us into developing the property. It affords our groups, the IDA and the LDC, and our charges for economic development to actually have those properties to show someone if in fact there was interest. So that was the two areas there on the lakefront. Downtown by the ice rink, there's just the city center, there's two commercial zones, central business and central business 5-story. Through a little bit of discussion, we thought we would extend the 5-story, which is the darker pink here, down the street a little bit toward the skating rink. There's a bunch of vacant land, and possibly if that was a little bit taller, the opportunity, it might help a developer. So that's a minor.
Is that the former OEO?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
And the parking lot, if someone wanted to develop that.
Yeah.
But it really just allows a little bit broader development in the area, instead of having to go for a variance if someone came there. Again, no plans to develop that, no one looking at it, but part of what the package is, and it kind of says it in the comments from the meeting, is that once we had someone on staff, an economic development person, then we would have a list of parcels and kind of a package to essentially market and talk to people about and show, not just the industrial park, if there's actually no parcels up there now, but like we were doing with that, but the GEDC and any other vacant properties, that these would at least be a little bit more conducive.
Could some of that also be possible future parking garage?
Yeah, I don't think that's limited. I did not.
I mean, that's one of the things downtown that we're always fighting, and it has been brought up previous. I've been around a long time. Anyway, it was brought up. I mean, it's something you like and something you don't like about it, but parking has always been a concern. And when you come down here and that whole place is filled up down there. And
I don't recall ever seeing anything about parking. I mean, there's parking restrictions in the code, or if you have a property, how many parking spots do you have for the type of business you have? But
right.
I recall the parking garage thing. There might be something there.
Well, when Matt was in the position,
Be a good thing to check.
he had brought up, but it had been brought up and just discussed. But it also talked about the difficulties and the challenges and the finances and everything else with it. But it is something I think, for development, you can develop and develop and develop, but if you don't have the parking areas, I know we've approached Verizon up here. It's kind of ridiculous that this sits there. And of course, they're going to put $1 billion on the property if they were going to sell it. But it is something that needs to be, kept in the forefront, because that is a concern.
The other areas, if you go south on the map, the blue on the last parcel on the end, that's the American Legion parcel.
What's the other blue?
The other one's Laughlin School, the next one up. This is Geneva on the Lake.
The blue there is Geneva on the Lake.
That's Geneva on the
Okay.
Lake. This is Laughlin School, and that's the American Legion. So Laughlin School is still still okay. The brown color there is large lot. It's called large lot residential, which it's a certain size lot. And so those are existing buildings, so we didn't feel that one. But there is that parcel across from Laughlin School that is woods, undeveloped and for sale. And we thought that, again, that would be good to change that to the mixed use hospitality. So that's also circled there. These are our recommendations. This first, that doesn't mean it's going to happen. Secondly, doesn't mean development's going to happen. I want to just, because
Green, the other green there, that's the cemetery here.
Green the cemetery.
All right, because there's a lot of rumors going around, as there always are, about Lackland School and the developers of American Legion interested in that, and then them building across the street from them on that land, a smaller facility for Lackland School. That's the
And that may,
some of the scuttlebutt
and
out there.
that may happen. Well, we're recommending again. I mean, there's trying to avoid the complication of getting a use variance for a developer. Just try to streamline things, make it a little bit easier, put on a list of things that could be developed for this. If you have a mixed use hospitality, doesn't mean you can't put apartments there or housing there. I mean, it's kind of a gradation. And then the last is up north toward Exchange Street and Gates. There's housing there now. We thought that would increase and it's actually coded here on the map as it's this purple area right here. It's coded as industrial. We thought if we could go to mixed medium density residential, that might allow the opportunity for some apartments. It would probably mean removing some of the single use residential, single homes, but there's quite a bit of land around in the kind of pockets that could be developed. So that's why that was put into the pile. Again, so that's really what one of our goals was, is just to see if we can see, there may be other opportunities. This is after a meeting or two that we've discussed it. So when that comes to the forefront, hopefully our recommendations will be considered and discussed further. The other thing was that we talked about, and is also contingent on having a marketing person, is the Geneva made proposal, and kind of scrutinizing that. The thought was, well, if we were to spend the money to increase those marketing efforts, any inquiries wouldn't be able to be handled. So we thought that it would be great if there was someone there to handle them, instead of just say, hey, come to Geneva, and people come and have no one to talk to about it. So we kind of shelf that until the first thing happens. And that's about it. Time this much.
The only other thing on the zoning that Rob brought up at the LDC meeting the other day was that this area here that is like orange and kind of, I don't know what you call this color. It's like a gray brown or a green brown color. When you have this many colors, you can't get picky, but that these areas here, while the zoning may be appropriate for those areas, could be targets for development for future kind of target areas for either like a New York Main Street or for just kind of really thinking about what do these areas need to look like from a small business and a like neighborhood business type perspective. And so I just figured I'd point that out here too, or remind folks here that these could be some good areas to look at in the future as well.
Right now they're zoned industrial and
So this one here is neighborhood business, which is more like kind of houses converted into business retail. This one mixed residential. So there's, I think, an array of things that could happen there. A good place to look for.
I think the idea from the consultants when that changed from it was an industrial space, but it's difficult to get trucks in there. It's difficult for traffic and whatnot. It is more of a residential type area, but the mixed use allows kind of the use of the older buildings to be developed into something other than houses, but could be residential.
Is that the area where there's talk of moving the tracks?
Yeah, that's
that area?
primarily on cameras thing. He mentioned at one of our meetings here. It's actually not moving the tracks, it's moving the railroad yard.
Yard.
There still would be a track there.
Right.
It still goes through the city. There'll still be some railroad traffic. It's just the cars wouldn't be sitting there. And if I recall the article in the paper, the owner of the railroad said, sure, if you want to give me $1 million, I'd be glad to do it. I mean, there are some areas that might be more conducive, but it's a pretty heavy lift.
And then the last thing is that the committee also talked about kind of reestablishing a walkway to the sixth ward. We brought this up at the LDC meeting on Wednesday. So the sixth ward connecting it to the lake. And, you know, the mayor brought up that this was actually looked at during the DRI process. And it ended up not being included due to the cost versus statistics about use. There was some questions about whether the exorbitant cost of doing something like that would have the payoff that makes sense for at least the DRI project. So that was the initial response to that, is that it's a great idea and would be a wonderful thing to have, but could be cost prohibitive in the long term.
I think the thought behind some of that, and I know push from some of the people that are talking about that in the railroad, is the point that it would open up that area to better access and therefore possibly better development or more development in that area.
Yeah, especially.
But it is and would be expensive.
I mean, again, it could have been an exaggeration, but apparently that bridge would have cost about what the whole $10 million was.
Yes.
So it would have absorbed kind of the whole thing. And
Right. But we do have that access, that right to have that access there, according to what I've been told, is, you know, we haven't ceded that to the railroad or anything that, you know, we can't.
Devon
Yeah.
Street,
Yeah.
Street, yeah. Right.
Yeah, we can't not do that. But it is something that,
We might just need to think of some creative solutions.
yes.
Yeah.
And financing.
Financing. An Angels owner.
Okay. Any questions about our efforts here? It's good to get together with the LDC and coordinate some things instead of us kind of doing them separately. And hopefully we'll be able to make some progress on some of these initiatives.
And the next meeting, we're going to focus on the business outreach that we've been talking about to existing businesses and kind of strategizing that and what that outreach might look like.
And have a consistent script that we could, you know, ask the same questions, engage existing businesses.
Yeah, that's important because we,
Yeah.
you know, sometimes they feel like they're left out.
Right.
You know, they said, oh, they're just looking at all the new development. They're not looking at, you know, keeping or maintaining. Bob and I, who used to be on this board, you know, he mentioned that more than once, you know, nobody comes to see me about anything or whatever. So, I mean, you know, something like that discussion would be great.
And also, I see Lowell stepped off, but we did not discuss it this last meeting, but the previous meeting, we talked about that awards program, some sort of recognition for individual and or business investment in properties, you know, to enhance things that similar to what's going on at the Geneva on the lake, you know, we should go out that, and, you know, it would be nice if a person taking outside money, bringing it into the city and making investments in properties. It'd be nice if they're recognized in some sort of award or plaque or something. You know, I think it's important. So
Well, it's not like for them being recognized, but putting it out before the public in terms of,
exactly,
and that's
so that
something.
they would know that.
And it's also something that, just for your note too, a little bit, that we don't put that out there in the local news so people can see, oh, these things are going on, you know,
And again, that's something that the development person put together. I think that's one of the things we kind of have these great ideas. We just don't have a way of seeing to fruition. You know,
Right.
We talk about, well, you know, some of us can do some volunteer efforts, but it does need to be coordinated. That would be great. All right, new business, financial committee report.
So there are two I guess, three main topics. One was just reviewing policies, which we'll deal with in October at the annual meeting. The second was the budget, which is the next item on the agenda. And the third is that we have a CD maturing today that we need to decide what to do with that money. There's about a little over $15,000 in that CD. At the committee meeting, I was asked to get some rates, which I couldn't get from banks until this week because of everything that's happening with interest rates right now. I did get rates from two banks. Lions came back with the most favorable rates. And I also got a money market rate from them in case the board would like to maybe hold some money in a more liquid interest-bearing account just to see what happens moving forward with interest rates. So the rates I got on those, they're municipal rates. A 3-month would be 0.55%, 6-month would be 0.7%, and 12-month would be 0.9%. And then the money market was 0.35. So nothing to write home about, but better than we've been seeing. So that's good. The question at hand is, do you want to go ahead and establish a new CD at this point? And if so, how much money would you like to put in there? At the committee meeting, we discussed some of the funds that are coming in over the next few months. We just got that influx from the American Tower, the Trinity fees are going to be coming in. And I think we kind of landed on it wouldn't be unreasonable to put $50,000 or $60,000 and still have plenty of money for cash flow for whatever investments need to happen at Gateway or other projects that the group wants to do over the next number of months. So that's kind of where the discussion landed. We were going to wait to see what the rates were and then bring it back to this group.
Our thoughts were basically that we felt with the changes that maybe a staggered lock-in of some dollars. Now, where are we with, besides the tower money, what do we have besides the 15 from, so I mean, that's the 15 and 76 is 91. And then what else?
So on the,
It was a pretty, I mean, we're better off than we've been
A long time.
in years ever since.
so you just had the 70 something come in from American Tower. About 90 is going to be coming in from Trinity. And then
Is about to come in, but what's in? Just that 91 that,
currently you've got about 233 in there. You've got
230.
15 going out soon for the environmental.
okay, so 233, is that besides the tower? Or
That does not
includes-
include the tower.
Does not include the tower.
Yeah,
So
that was
basically,
like
we're
the
looking at
other
300,000, a little more than 300,000 that's there. And our thoughts that we wanted the board to make this decision basically as not, as to how we want to lock it up based on how much we're going to need. Now, we know that, there's a possibility with a gateway that
That's undetermined.
undetermined at this point. And as a concern there, I don't know where we are with GEDC, whether there's anything that, we need to consider. And so what we were thinking about is staggering, putting some more money away than 15,000. But
not go too far.
not going too far out either,
Yeah.
because rates are going up and I hate to be too locked in with a big chunk and but 0.55 and 0.7 is better than the 0.23 and that's there too. So I don't know how the, committee feels in terms of that aspect there.
I think the 50 to 60 makes sense. Additional 50 to 60 would make it maybe, 75 total. Only because, like you said, we don't know the gateway. And even though we'll share it with the LDC, they don't have this type of money. I don't believe. And we haven't talked to the developer about sharing that expense. So without that, that's a big unknown. it's really big unknown. The second thing is GDC. There are some things that we need to discuss, in the future about the future of that property, and are some future expenses. I think Webster's will point out, the boiler's old, and there's some improvements that do need to be made. I think Webster's a little bit more organized about the way they're going to do leasehold improvement or do the improvements for tenants. I think that's a little bit more organized to where if we do make improvements, that we make sure that it's rolled into the lease. There are still some very aggressive leases in there. So I think we better hold on to some money just in case.
If we go with the 75, I think I'd feel comfortable putting it at the 6 month.
Sure.
To get the 0.7.
Yeah.
And then the rest, can we put in money market? And at least get the 3.5?
Pull it out when we need it.
Yeah, because it's available to us anytime, because it's a money market, so you can pull it out anytime. So basically you go to 75 into the 6 months. And then the most, or I don't know if you want to keep a little bit out of there or not, or just put it all in the money market.
Probably some in operations, right?
Yeah, because the money markets usually have like a limitation on how much you can pull out per month or how many checks you can write
Okay.
per month, which we don't write a lot of checks.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily see it being an issue, but you might not want to hamstring yourself either.
Jason, do you have any comments, or Ben?
Yeah, so I was looking at the GEDC financial statement. It shows that we have a profitability of this month. I think it was $8,200, but there's a lot of things missing in it, right? So when you look at it, the utilities expense is grossly underestimated. So I'm assuming that it's not accurate. There's some other things missing in there, insurance expense. Here's my point. My point is, and Ann, you and I discussed this briefly, the GEDC building in its current form is a loss. In my opinion, just my opinion, it's a loss. I think it needs to be repurposed and potentially sold. If I was going to go ahead and utilize funds, I would do it to invest in that property to get it ready for sale so we can get it back in the tax roll and get some money for it. I feel like real estate right now, obviously the markets have changed with rates and such, but real estate is still in the forefront of everybody's mind as far as purchasing these things up, especially with the preferred equity groups. I would focus on getting that building ready for sale and trying to repurpose it. My opinion.
Yeah, I'll jump in quick. Jason, you bring up some very valid points. That's something that I think I want to kind of dig into and go through that myself. In terms of the money market and repurposing, and I agree with a lot what you said with that, putting those funds, but definitely keeping enough out where it is going to be liquid.
Okay.
We've mentioned before about the possibility of looking at the GEDC and for sale. And we said something we want to put on,
Future agenda.
Future agenda to look at. But I think you're right. In order to get there's something out of it, it would take some investment to make it more appealing to someone to buy. And of course, it's not a bad thing to get something more back on the tax rolls too.
There are some issues. The city is a large tenant there. With the Departments of Public Works rents that space for $1. And so the city's getting an advantage, and the city supports us. I mean, I'm not saying it's unfair. It's just that there's some concerns if that went into a private ownership thing, it would impact the city adversely.
Can the property be subdivided?
It could be subdivided, could be rezoned, or I mean, there's a number of things that could be done. It's complex. I guess that's all I'm saying. There's some things. The kitchen, the huge investment that's made in that kitchen that the city of Geneva made, and they rent the space from the GDC. That's another complication. If someone were to take that over, what does would they take that over and compensate the city for that investment in that kitchen? And how does it impact the current or the future tenants and stuff? So it's a little bit of a complex issue that would take a bunch of study and things that we would want to.
Craig's input, basically on something like that.
He,
No.
his stance is he'll buy it.
Oh, I know, he'll buy it for $1, I know.
But
I don't think Jason would like that.
yeah, so there is something kind of globally that as we consider this, and Rick, you brought up at the last meeting, kind of our motivation, we don't want to have huge expenses as we develop properties and encourage economic development. But our goal is to secure businesses and we don't have to make money on every deal, I guess is what I'm saying. And if we could, because we do have a revenue stream with pilots that kind of help us support it. And the Dove Block is a great example, not that we participated in it, but it required government action in order to get that up to speed, to be able to sell it for what it did. I mean, if you did a profit and loss on that property, Jason, that would be a terrible example, but one that enhanced the city. Just the fact that that the city stood behind it, used some of the DRI money to get the elevator and bring it up to snuff, and then a developer took it over and then it was sold. But sold for about a third of the investment that was there. So there are certain areas of the city that require investments in order to bring it up to the point of sale. So and we do not make money on every deal. And so we try to justify it with a cost benefit justification. And those are all projections. If you did it at current time, it's kind of a hard, we have to look at the long term. So that's what we do in there. Anyway, so that'll be a future discussion. But I think one that impacts the city substantially because of the Department of Public Works there would require rezoning. It's a joint building. I don't know how they, or subdivision of some sort. But we can do that.
We just want to, and I think we're more vigilant in having Craig there too, in terms of watching tenants, watching situations. I mean, we used to have sizable
Exposure.
Because I remember signing off on a few $100,000 here, a few $100,000 there. We had 2 different CDs at one time. And it was a GEDC that siphoned that money off because of the loss of all the electronic stuff we were left with that we had to get rid of. But I think we're more vigilant with that kind of stuff that limits our exposure to huge expenses. That's why it just kind of piqued our interest when we saw some barrels found there. But fortunately, if it's only 5,000 to get rid of, that,
Not 300,000.
not 300 or 200, and we ended up 200 and I think 20-something thousand dollars that we took out of our CDs to get rid of that stuff. But I think we're in better position now than we would have, and I don't foresee any big something coming up now. Some investments with the boiler and stuff, yes, but that's a positive investment.
Okay, well, we'll make sure that's on the agenda. Glad you're listening to the conversation because it is a big deal. And I don't know if you've had an opportunity to see the property.
Yes, yep.
All right, because it's used to be a pretty big business here at one time. All right, any question on the investments? You want to kind of close this out? Do you want to do, everyone okay with the 75 and the investments? I'm sorry, in the CD? That's what you're.
For 6 months.
Yeah, I'm good with that. I think that's what we should do.
6 months.
Yeah.
And then,
Ben, Jason, you okay with that?
Yes.
you got 225. How much do you want to put into the money market?
150, maybe.
Yeah, that's what I would
150.
say.
So you got another 75 that's just in.
Right there for operating.
And then we can always.
Do we need a motion on this, all that, or just kind of, it's the finance committee's kind of,
I think it would be helpful to have a motion on it all.
okay.
Yeah.
Like to have a motion on the table right now, 75 into a 6-month CD, rolling over the 15 that's there, adding 60 to it, and then taking 150 and putting it into a money market account. I have a motion for that, please.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
Ben and Rick, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Okay. Any opposed? Okay, so passed.
I oppose.
Okay, Jason opposed.
Thank you.
Okay, budget.
Okay, so this was also reviewed at the Finance Audit Committee meeting a couple weeks ago. Mostly it is based on prior years. So there's 3 columns to the budget. One is the actual IDA operation, one is the park partnership, and one is GEDC. The operational was more or less based on prior years. And then the major change was I increased the professional services line, just assuming that there may be some things with Gateway and/or, you know, if there is some sort of continuing relationship for compliance or staffing support, that's where all of that would go. So I increased that. I also included the Trinity fees in the revenue, which normally you wouldn't budget for project fees, but that one we know is coming. So I included that in the revenue. The park partnership line has pretty much been zeroed out because there's not a lot of activity there anymore. There used to be the rent from American Tower, but now that that parcel was sold, that rent is going away. So there's not really anything there. We don't really anticipate any expenses or revenue until additional land is sold. So there's nothing in that line. And then the GEDC budget came over from the Websters and their anticipation of next year. They did, you know, note to me that there's some current vacancies, and in terms of or tenants who are in the process of moving out. So considering those vacancies and there being a few months of vacancies in a few of those spaces, they're expecting rental income to be down a little bit next year, but do intend to fill those spaces. Obviously, it might just take a little bit of time to flip some of those tenants. So that's why that budget looks that way.
Tracy, budget in the packet?
Yeah, I don't see it.
Oh, it wasn't in the packet?
So I was just looking for it.
Yeah, oh, no.
I overlooked it.
Like, I know I've seen it, but it's not in this packet. Sorry, not catching that before the meeting.
That's my fault. Okay. I will put it on the screen.
Is there,
No.
is this? Okay, we have time on this, don't we?
We do not have time on this, actually. It's due to the state August 1st. It has to be submitted
Okay.
in Paris.
And so we miss it by a few days. Yeah.
So we would miss it. I mean, we could, if we put it in a few days late, it's not going to be the end of the world if we wanted to do it next month. You know, being that we just did our Paris reporting for last year, a couple of days isn't going to make a huge difference.
I know we were all very comfortable with it.
I would rather not be late
Given,
since
Well,
we've been,
we can go with the recommendation of the finance committee. I mean,
Here, let me just,
3 of our members scrutinized it. I don't know that.
I just, I'd like to be on time with the state.
I can't believe I did
turn a
that.
page on that one.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly.
I don't know how I missed that in the packet. I'm sorry. That was my fault.
I was looking through it and
Okay, so I've got it up on the screen here. You've got the 98.8 is the Trinity project fees. Rental income, the American Tower was removed from the park line, but this is the downtown winery. It's like a monthly $195 that you've been getting for quite some time. So that was left in. This is just assuming a little bit of interest. And in fact, you may end up seeing more now that
It'll be
interest
more and
rates are
more
on the
likely,
rise
yeah.
and you're putting more money into investments, but this has always been in your budget. As I understand, this is what you've paid the city for staffing support in the past. So I left that there, assuming that you might go back to some sort of a relationship with the city next year. And then,
That's probably not going to happen. I don't think, with Webster's, but it hasn't happened for quite a while. We haven't paid anything to the city. I don't think.
Well, no, because we were paying when Sage and Adam were. That's what we were paying for their time.
For whose?
Sage and Adam,
Sage and
for the
Adam.
city manager and the comptroller's time.
Right, okay. Oh, they put in, oh, I see, okay. Right, that's right. So that's not the, I mean, that should be offsetting against your fees.
Yes, yeah, theoretically.
I mean, it wouldn't be,
Yeah.
I would think it's an either or.
Yeah, I think there's conversations to be had about what those relationships look like. 2023, starting later this year.
Sorry, I mean, there's
But yes.
an argument to keep it there, I understand, but.
Yep, yeah.
it should be.
No, and I mean, I think some of the things we've talked about are, you know, okay, the primary administration, day-to-day stuff goes back, but maybe compliance is kept
Subbed
with subbed out, or, you know, doing, you know, the cost benefit analysis on projects gets subbed out, or certain project support. So those are conversations that we just don't have clarity on yet. So we left this in here. And then again, I mentioned the professional services. This was increased a little bit over prior years, or a good chunk over prior years. I think it's usually about 10,000, just to account for what's happening with Gateway, or if you do have additional professional services that you need moving forward. But again, these are budgets, so
Yeah,
they reflect what we know now. And I increased the audit cost a little bit. Although this year seems to have come in a little bit lower than I was expecting. So you might not actually even need that full budget. And then the GEDC column came in from the Websters based on what they've been experiencing and what they're expecting.
One quick question, because I keep forgetting to ask this. Do we pay legal fees? Like, I know we use those guys quite a bit through the pilots, but I don't remember seeing anything.
So most of the time with Harris Beach, so they get paid by the projects for any work they do on project related stuff. And then most of the time what they're able to do is kind of cover other things, like if they come to a meeting here, or like writing, like they wrote that video conferencing policy, that they're gonna make that up in some project fees.
Gotcha. Okay.
Occasionally, or like with a land sale, that comes out of the proceeds from the land sale. So occasionally you might run into a situation where there are legal fees, like if there's, you know, a really expensive or a really extensive policy issue, or like something pops up. I don't think you've actually paid them anything in quite some time. It's just a good thing to have in your budget in case you need it.
That's good information. Thank you.
But generally speaking, they're making up their time and their incurred costs from project fees that come in.
I have a few questions, real quick. So I guess this is directed towards the Websters. The first thing is, I'm looking at on the screen, the electric cost at 80 grand. Currently, year to date, in the first 6 months, it's been 96,000 in utility expense. This month, it showed 2,600. We haven't had a month less than 10,000. So I feel like that might be underestimated, and it's kind of counterintuitive to, if you go back up to the revenue expectation, the revenue expectation is 250 in rental income. Now, the average of the last 2 months without Pretzel Logic, without them in there, is averaging about less than 14,000. So you're looking at 168,000 in a 12-month cycle. If we average the last 2 months, which is the current, I guess, leases that we have in place, do we have any future leases that are coming up that are going into that number that we're aware of, prospects, things along those lines? And then two, if our rental income is going up, how is our utility expense going down so significantly?
My question or my thought would be, is their reimbursements offsetting that line item? Our tenant reimbursements offsetting
Yeah, so
that expense?
to some extent. So I think the utilities, so in some of the more recent or this year, and some of those were things that were maybe outstanding from prior time periods. So like, I think there's been some wonky things with the utilities for the 2021, 2022 fiscal year. So, and keep in mind, this is all on a note or a September to, or an October to September basis. We're not talking about the calendar year here. So we're really actually 10 months into the year. as opposed in terms of our fiscal year. So I think some of it is that there was some wonky stuff happening with utilities. They've, over the course of this year, been able to separate out some of the utilities more efficiently. And there are a few instances where there are reimbursements for utilities out of the kitchen, like for water, there's a reimbursement on that. And then some of the tenants do an electric reimbursement. But overall, I think that those issues are getting worked out and things should start to even out a little bit more moving forward. It's just for a while there were some tenant utilities that were being paid by GDC that really should have been being paid by tenants. And that stuff has all gotten separated out now.
And there's been a lot of cleanup since Webster came around too. Can we just remind ourselves, when did Webster start? Does anybody remember? Has it been a year?
Just about a year now.
So
Yeah. Yeah,
There's a 2-month overlap for our fiscal year
right.
with massive aid into this fiscal year, so it's not quite finished.
And so there's issues there from cleaning up some of those items.
Yeah.
Also, the rental income, I know Craig is basically looking at knowing that he's going to be filling some of those sites, that are going to become empty or are empty, but it's just a point. So he's looking, if you're trying to set up a budget, part of that income is anticipated income. It's not, based on this month, what do we got times 12?
The 60% increase compared to what's current, that seems like a lot. It's just a question for sure.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good question. I'm just thinking where Craig's coming from and what he foresees in terms of that. And so
And their statement, they list utility income. Would that mean what they collect in utilities from?
Yeah.
I mean, year to date, that's
$58,000.
So
yeah, they're recouping that from previous time.
So 80 and
So I think some of this is just catching up from prior years.
Yes.
Right.
Well, and his leases renew, and he's catching it up, making sure it's included in the lease. I think there's leases there that didn't include utilities and stuff. It was just a little bit.
Yeah, because I know a big chunk of that 58 was water that had not been, there was a big back bill on water that was supposed to get reimbursed by the kitchen specifically. And I think a big chunk of that is that reimbursement.
Yeah. One of the
Hopefully keep an eye on
important, the important things I think that we need to, as a group, just make sure of is when we collect third-party information, we just need to vet it. That's all. Just ask the questions so we understand it, rather than just take it for face value. That's my point.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good point. But I think also, giving them this transition time and seeing that, and obviously they're not new to this business. And so I guess I'm still pretty confident in Craig Webster and their associates for operational.
All right, then go down to the revenue again.
You want revenue or just the bottom line here?
No, bottom line.
So, and then, there wasn't really anything else in that operational column. The big one is the GEDC piece. So, and they did say that, it looks like we're probably going to have a loss next year. And those are conversations that will need to be had at the time. Should those come to fruition, the feeling of the committee was, let's let this be for now, let this be the budget. And then if there's conversations about support to GEDC later, or, if they overperform or underperform, those are conversations that we can have. Because this is just a budget.
Okay, all right. So, everyone satisfied with the review of the budget so that we can do a
Yes.
motion to approve?
Yes, absolutely. The, one more thing, and I apologize. The statement that we get, the owner statement, can we, it shows us current, it shows us year to date. Can we also get a line for budget so we can see the variances?
Yeah, I'll ask them for that.
That would be helpful, just so I understand where we are. By
That's a good idea. That's a good idea. Keep track.
Well, it'd allow us to see 3 months and 6 months in and see how it's faring out.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you want that on the IDA reports as well?
Yeah, we don't have much. GDC has, we don't have much going on.
Yeah, we don't have, yeah, let's say just GEDC.
Okay.
Out.
Yep, I was
You all.
gonna say,
It was good. seeing you.
Yes,
Nice
yes.
meeting
We'll be
you.
in touch.
thanks very much.
Thank you.
Good luck.
So we just need a vote on that then.
Okay, motion to approve the 2022, 2023 budget as just presented. Motion, please.
Move.
Rick, Irene, second. All in favor of approving the budget?
Aye.
Any opposed? And passed. Thank you. Environmental services update, this is the Gateway project.
Yes, so the drilling, so last month we approved a contract with Plumley to do the additional testing and to write the remediation report. The drilling is done, the samples have been taken and sent to the lab, and they're waiting for those to come back to start with the remediation report. I did get an email from them yesterday that they found someone, there was a part of the testing, some kind of an electromagnetic thing, I don't know. They survey the ground for metal, and there are a couple of anomalies they want to chat about, but I don't know the full details. We're having a conversation on Monday. I'll include Neil in that conversation, you know, as someone who knows what he's talking about. And there might be some investigation related to those, but all in all, things are underway, not much to report yet. And it'll be probably a couple more weeks before they get those lab tests back.
And once we have the plan of how to take care of the issue, then we'll sit down with the developer. Have you had any conversations with them currently or?
Not since the DEC, when the DEC came back and said, we want you to do a remediation plan. There was an exchange and nothing has changed for the developer.
Okay, so no news.
Go, the old budget.
No
It's
news.
all laid to rest.
The what?
The budget, the old, not budget, the old.
The audit is done. Everything's submitted. Working through a couple of the entries with the auditor, but yes, for the most part. And we'll be ready to start back up again in a couple months.
Hopefully
Yes.
finally on schedule. It's only
Yeah.
been about 5
Yeah.
years on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so any questions about the Gateway project and environmental exposure there? Okay. If there's no other, that takes it unfinished business, no need for an executive session, we're good here. I think we're there. Any other new business that someone wants to, or unfinished business someone wants to bring up? Any questions before we close the meeting? The motion to adjourn? All in favor, aye? We're out.
Aye. All right, good.
Thanks, Ann.